What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to Salty Runback, here to be your weekly intake of North American Developmental League of Legends. It's been a while since we've said those words out on this screen, but we are back finally.
It's been a while.
Middle of off season, we thought this would be a good time to check in. Worlds is over. LCS has gone through a lot of changes, which we're going to talk about a little bit, and we are just about ready to start the roster mania for NACL, which I am very excited to get into. My name is Grapes. I'm joined alongside Hawk as per usual. Hawk, it's been over a month since episode 33. How's everything been for you?
Dude, you know, my life has been crazy, honestly. I've had a lot of life changes since we did our last episode. I'm moving to Los Angeles now. If you live in Los Angeles and you're watching this episode, let's go get coffee or something. I don't know. Be a lot of fun.
Normal people do, right?
Yeah, that's something that we could play League of Legends too, I guess. On that LA ping, 80 ping. Oh, so that's me. I put in my 2 weeks notice for my job today. That was fun.
Wow. So
Yeah.
taking a couple weeks off before going out west, it seems.
Yep.
That's
Spend the holidays at home and everything. But
That's super
Grapes,
exciting.
not only has my life changed a lot, the North American League of Legends scene has changed a lot too.
Yeah. We got a lot to talk about from tier 1 to tier 2, maybe a little tier 3 and collegiate as well, depending. Just a quick update before we get into this. We are planning on being around for 2024 for that next season. I don't know if we've ever officially announced it, but maybe just a bit of a reminder and a bit of an official update for everybody. In terms of what the plan is for the rest of the offseason, not entirely sure. When news breaks, we'll obviously be here to talk about it, but expect some of these at least like throughout the rest of 2023, every once in a while, every week or two, depending on how busy the news cycle is. And then as soon as that new year hits, Hawk, we're ready to go.
Yeah, I know. We put the Mbappe meme on. We will be here no matter what. Salty Runback is not going anywhere for 2024. As it was a lot of fun doing this podcast with you this past season, I would say, and we'll have a lot to talk about. But yeah, while the off season happens, sort of how we've been doing things. Honestly, even before our month-long hiatus, we were kind of just dropping episodes when things came up. That's probably going to be how it is for the next month or so. But yeah, Grapes, we got a long episode of us. I never asked how you are though. How have you been doing in the last month?
I'm doing pretty good. Just hanging in there at school, going through classes. We're almost towards the end of the line in terms of the fall semester, and then just getting back into 2024. And I think that's when things start to get real. It's my last year in college now. We're gonna go through the whole process just on the other side of the coin.
I know. Like everyone saw it happen to me last year, and then there you go. Like, you follow suit.
Yeah. Before we get underway, before we start our headlines, I just want to shout out real quick. Today was Spotify Rap Day, and we got a couple of notifications in our inbox. Shout out to everybody. I know we don't necessarily plug it, but we do post all of our episodes on Apple Music and Spotify. And shout out to I think it was 14 people who had us in their top 10 podcasts for the entire year on Spotify. I didn't even realize that people listened to us over there. But
14.
Yeah, shout out to y'all.
Yo. Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah. I think there was like 3 or 4 who we were their number 1 podcast. And if you do want to out yourselves on socials, tag us on Twitter or something like that. We'll give you a bit of a shout out. I mean, you deserve it at this point.
That is so much more hype than being in the top 0.5% of League of Legends listeners in your Spotify Wrapped and having them as your number 1 artist.
Oh yeah. I think both of us.
I think that was both of us. Yeah, and I had 200 hours more or 200 more minutes listened than you, so that's even worse.
Yeah. I don't listen to that much Spotify music, and I think a lot of that was just like when we were streaming on this channel, and I needed some music. I just throw up the Riot Games royalty free playlist. We'll let that roll.
Yep.
And that now everyone really knows that we're gamers. So enough about that. Enough about Spotify. Once again, shout out to everybody who did support us throughout this year. Definitely meant a lot to us. But let's get in to our headlines here for this week, for episode number 34. Hawk, we're going to go a little bit all over the place today, starting with some international talk. As the last time we spoke, the Swiss stage for the World Championships was about to get underway. Now we're about a week or two out from that championship finally ending, with T1 taking the victory over Weibo. And we also had 3 of our LCS teams go in and out of the tournament at various phases. Hawk, I want to give a letter grade to each of these 3 North American teams: NRG, C9, Team Liquid. What do you got for us?
We don't even include Golden Guardians because they get an F.
Yeah, we already talked about them last
They
time,
lost
so.
to EU. Ooh, this is a tough one. Maybe do we want to go like team by team, or do you just want me to like give?
Yeah,
my
let's go
grades?
team by team.
Team by team. Okay, I'll start with whoever came in. Team Liquid came last.
They
Team
came pretty,
Liquid-
pretty dead last.
Yeah, Team Liquid gets like. Honestly, I don't know if this is a hot take. They get a C. They get an average passing grade. I think it was completely fine. Especially for whatever reason, at Worlds itself, there was this narrative, like the Korean super team narrative came back for Team Liquid at Worlds, but anyone that watched LCS knew that team kind of sucked for most of the year. So the fact that they even made Worlds was an accomplishment. The fact that they maybe played the best game against T1 out of like anyone in the tournament except for
No,
JDG.
actually true.
Like
Yeah.
they played decently, and then yeah, they completely fell apart and they bombed out. But I don't think based on their domestic performance that was unexpected. I actually think that the Team One game kind of hurt their performance as far as like expectations were concerned. Because then people all of a sudden thought they would be good, and then they weren't. So
Yeah,
they get a C for me, Grapes.
I think like a C, C minus probably
Yeah.
makes sense for me as well. They won one game. It was against Vietnam. I saw a ton of people like throwing hard flame at them, like this is the worst NA performance at Worlds ever because we lost to Vietnam. And it's like, I mean, like I understand it,
that's
but
crazy,
Vietnam was
man.
like Gam was playing all right throughout the tournament. Kiaya had a great series against TL, I think, as a whole in the top lane, making Summit look pretty foolish, I think, honestly. But I don't really think that is necessarily indicative of it being like the worst performance of all time. Obviously,
No, definitely not.
after the T1 win, I definitely not win. It felt like a win in our heads, in our hearts. The moral victory for TL
It's a moral
against
victory.
T1. Definitely had some higher expectations, and if you did watch some of the docu-series that they put out, it definitely seems like the mentals took a toll after losing to NRG, and then after that, kind of it's tough to rebound, especially in such a format where you're like going so quickly from game to game. So yeah, I think a C minus makes a decent amount of sense, especially because, as you said, the expectations that maybe at least we had going in for TL. I thought there was a chance that they all pop off at the right time. But in terms of what they looked like throughout the summer split and everything, it made a decent amount of sense.
It was
Cloud9,
fine.
I guess, is our next team up. Almost made it in. They got kind of close, I guess. Sort of. They lost to Fnatic, I believe, to get knocked out.
Yep. 2-1.
Call this a hot take. I didn't really have too many expectations for how C9 was going to perform at Worlds. I know you're a little bit higher on them, like in general, but if I had to give them a grade, maybe like a B. I thought they did like all right. I was okay with how they did. They beat Mad. I'm happy with at least
They did
that.
beat Mad.
You know?
They did beat Mad Lions. C9's tough for me because I feel like all things considered, it was a very pedestrian NA 2-seed performance. But like I feel like they really like if they had beat Fnatic, I would have easily given them like a B plus. I'm bouncing between C plus B minus right now, Grapes. I can't decide if they deserve that 80% or not because like Cloud9 did not do anything bad. They did not do anything tremendously disappointing. They lost in a very competitive best of 3 to Fnatic after winning the first game. I think that's the thing that stings the most. I think they really could have beat Fnatic. I think they could have been the better team on the day, and then they didn't. And then they didn't really look competitive against the top teams. Yeah, honestly, I don't have much to say. B minus maybe is fine with me. They were fine. They didn't embarrass themselves or anything, but I do like it's weird. I feel like my expectations for them weren't super high going in. They already showed, I think, throughout a lot of summer, a lot of shakiness, even though they were the first seed. They to me looked really bad in a lot of their wins throughout summer split, and I think that NRG got a lot better over the course of the split, and we saw that manifest itself. So I wasn't super high on C9, but like at the same time, I don't know. Like I feel like Cloud9 is always a team that is going to be disappointed by not taking a game off of an Asian team. So
Yeah, and speaking of their record against the Asian teams was a very, very convincing 0-2. They got smashed by what was it, LNG, and then perfect gamed almost by T1 after the performance that TL even had. I feel like those performances stick more in my head than even the series that they had against Mad.
Which, knowing what we know now, I feel like getting blasted by T1 is not as bad. At the time, it looked terrible, right? But like,
true. Yeah.
Knowing what we know now, I think it like makes like seriously, Team Liquid played the single best game against T1 except for Gen G and JDG, which is like crazy. So
such a funny statement.
I don't think it's and JDG played games that looked as bad as Cloud9's. So like it's not terrible. But yeah. I don't know. It wasn't
Speaking
great.
of, real quick, the M&S stuff, hilariously insane.
Dude, the
by the way, we don't have to get into that too much here, because I feel like we have a lot of other
what a
things that
roller
are more
coaster
important
it
to
was
talk
for
about.
M&S this year, man.
Geez,
like,
man.
what a
Yeah.
roller coaster. We were sitting here on this podcast back when he was still playing in Challengers in spring, being like, this guy is turning over a new leaf. Like, he's going to revitalize Cloud9. What a... Like, man, the band to... The band to success arc for Jensen really worked out. That Gambit absolutely paid off. Cloud9 took the toxic Gambit again this year, and it did not hit the same.
Yeah, he did have a good moment in spring. After that, it's kind of has been whatever. I wish him the best. I hope he has a good veterinarian career, whatever.
Yeah,
I
do hope he, just like so genuinely, I wish him success away from League.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like that's what
100%.
he needs, and he seems to recognize that for what that's worth. But maybe
Our
with
last
slightly
team,
less
and
self-awareness.
before we go on to talking about the LCS a little bit more, is NRG, and I think it's pretty self-explanatory. They get like an A+. I mean, 2-0 G2 the way that they did. Maybe an A-, maybe an A- because of how they performed against Weibo. Weibo did eventually, beat
Future World Finalists.
beat BLG and make it to the finals, but maybe if NRG took a game off of Weibo, maybe even like made it a very competitive series, it would have been an A+. But I honestly am like okay with sticking it around that range because of how fucking awesome that G2 series was, man. That was so cool.
I'm not gonna lie, NRG gets a low A-. I'm not gonna cope that hard. Like, look, NRG beating G2 and fucking blasting them like that. It doesn't get better than that. That was a 100% A+. Like they get extra credit for that. Okay.
Yeah.
However, they were thoroughly unimpressive the rest of Worlds. They beat the Mad Lions. They beat Team Liquid. They got completely destroyed by every Eastern team they played against. It was not impressive. Other than G2. Hey, they went the furthest. They get an A on that grounds. They made
TL and G2. They beat 3 Western teams and then they made it. So
like they did what they had to do, and then they overperformed against G2, and it was amazing. And we're gonna make G2 suck it till the end of time. However, it really just was not that impressive of a Worlds. Otherwise, they played terribly against the Eastern teams. For me to get an A+, you have to do something like historic, and to me this was like
okay. That's
kind of historic, but not like it wasn't 2018 Cloud9. 2018 Cloud9 is an A+. That's it.
Yeah, I was thinking like this might be the most excited I've been about a NA team from Worlds since that Africa
Since then,
C9
yes.
series.
Since then, they've been the best. But
you can make an argument for like
is still the bar.
What was it? The Perks C9 team that like made it to quarters, maybe.
They made quarters, yeah. But that was less. They didn't 2-0 G2 on the way to doing that. So
yeah,
it's
exactly.
Not as cool. Like I don't know. That was another one of those ones too, where it was a 3-way tie at 2 and 4 in the group stage. So it's not like 2018 Cloud9. You got to remember, put in the group of death with the reigning world champion, the favorite to win the entire thing, and a Vitality team that's really scrappy, and they had a tiebreaker for first seed in the group. Like that's fucking insane. They beat
were really good that year.
So it's a much different story, I think, for that team.
Yeah, I was very happy with NRG's performance, especially because of that G2 series.
Oh yeah, they deserve an A-. They deserve an A-.
I'm okay with just only remembering those 2 games and nothing else.
That's
fine.
I'm
honestly like from this World Championships, I didn't get to watch too much of it because all the games are at freaking 3 a.m. But I'll remember those games
I massacred my sleep schedule to watch Worlds.
Yeah.
It was so bad.
Last thing about Worlds, I stayed up to watch the finals, and I'm very happy for Keria. I thought the whole New Jeans thing was fucking hilarious, and everything, and like how Faker, some of those teasers were really hype as well. But
okay, last thing about
6
Worlds,
a.m. wasn't great.
Yeah, we really need to move on. This could be a long episode, y'all, for the record. However, last thing about Worlds, so I woke up to watch finals as well. I fell asleep during game 3 and then slept through all my alarms and was late for work the next day. It's the double whammy of sadness. I slept through everything, so I didn't even I watched game 1 and 2, started game 3, and then at some point, I don't even remember falling asleep.
Yeah, and the series sucked. So
yeah, the series
whammy.
it wasn't even worth it. I didn't make it to the part that was worth it, which is seeing them win. And then I was late for work. It was awful. So,
yeah, it's okay. Honestly, overall, very solid World Championships. I always hate the ones. I always am not annoyed by the ones that are in the East, but
yeah,
we'll take it.
It was
Good
an okay
storylines.
world.
Yeah,
Swiss was cool. It wasn't that competitive.
yeah. All right, that's enough about recapping the World Championships. Let's get into topic number 2, which is maybe a little bit of a more somber note, as it was announced by John Needham immediately after the World Finals, actually, that the LCS was dropping 2 of their organizations, that being Golden Guardians and Evil Geniuses, and now running with 8 teams for the 2024 season. Hawk, obviously, this is not an LCS podcast, but this does have implications that kind of echo into the space that we often like to talk about. So let's talk about for a little bit. Are these LCS changes, are they going to be good for the league come 2024?
Yeah, what a question. So the actual question as it's written for us, Grapes, my opinion on it is that I actually don't feel like I can answer whether or not it's good for the league, because at the end of the day, Riot are the only ones that have the numbers on the financials and all that kind of stuff. If they're able to actually make the league more sustainable on the back end with 2 less teams, then sure. You know what I mean? I can't really dispute that, but I don't really know if we'll ever see that manifest itself in a tangible way to the audience, right? So I don't really feel like I can answer this question. What I can do is I can give my opinions on what have happened. And so that's what I intend on doing, which is I think this change is ridiculous in the time frame that it happened. Because I think it's one thing if the plan at the end of 2023 was, hey, we're going to have 2 less LCS teams. Who wants to be out? Okay, everyone knows that. We're going into 2024 with that plan. Not for a veteran tweet to come out in November, mid-November, and catch people off guard. I could be wrong. It seemed to me like some people figured out they were going to lose their jobs based on that tweet. And then subsequent events that happened within the next, I think 2 days. Later the announcement came out. I think it was 2 days, which is just unbelievable. And from what I think Travis Gafford reported on was that Riot did not make this decision. Golden Guardians and Evil Geniuses asked to leave, and Riot basically said yes.
Yep.
Which is also alarming. Does that mean the value of a franchise spot is 0? I don't know.
I think that's a tough question because Shopify bought in against
they did.
For TSM,
Shopify
and it was,
bought in.
And I'm pretty sure the number was way less than what the initial
Yes.
ask was about 15 million or something like that.
Yep.
So it's interesting. Yeah, I don't think the
this has to be the death of franchising. 2 teams just willingly leaving the league, right?
Yeah, the thing is that the other 8 teams definitely said that they wanted to stay, and so that is I think in a way a good sign.
That's true.
That now we have
Cloud9
8
said that they
orgs
were
that are very
profitable.
invested. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there definitely is a way to kind of make it. It's just I feel like is going to require a decent amount of change, and I think that is my answer to this question. I think dropping down to 8 teams, you get to reduce the revenue pool. You get to also, have theoretically, although I don't know if this exactly happened, you theoretically have a higher pool of talent to kind of choose from, and it's a more concentrated field.
I have opinions about that, but continue.
Which means that you have more competitive games overall. Again, not sure if that exactly happened because of the fact that things changed so late in the off season. But I think the execution needs to kind of definitely be there for this to actually work. I think, making sure that games are watchable and not on the weekdays anymore, and also to make sure that there are ways to generate true fandom for these 8 organizations, because if you are cutting 2 teams, creating a situation now where you can centralize your fan base a little bit more, creating new opportunities for those fans to be involved and to really enjoy the league is going to be imperative, because just cutting 2 teams and kind of keeping things the same is not going to help this league. It will kind of mean that things are on the downturn. But if the right things are kind of put into place, I could see this not being the worst thing. Again, it's the timing and the fact that multiple people had verbal agreements to sign with the LCS organizations that then decided to leave the league. So shout out to Surdy,
Yeah.
King, Shaden, Licorice even. It really sucks for all those guys.
Yeah, that I think you raised two really good points. Is like, if those teams didn't want to be in the league and they weren't going to add anything of value to it, then like I guess good riddance. You know what I mean? Drop the Azael tweet for TSM. Like I do think that is accurate, and I like how you express the teams that decided to say, looking at you Immortals, everyone thought you would sell at the end of 2023. Like, let's step it up in 2024. Let's actually do something. From what I've heard, it sounds like they're going to try to do stuff. We'll see what ends up happening on that end, Grapes. But yeah, so I definitely agree with that. I think the biggest thing is just like, I think any positives that come up from this are going to be largely intangible to like the viewing audience, which is not inherently a bad thing. I think that's just the truth of the situation. Main thing is like so many, people got fucked over by this. We got to stop doing this, guys. It's terrible. And it makes me upset. I really, I take issue with that. So, if we could stop doing that, I don't think this is inherently bad. The last point I want to make, just as regards to like level of competition, a lot of people like bring up this thing. I don't think that having 8 teams inherently makes the level of competition better. Like, it kind of does, but there's still going to be like a team in first place and a team in last. It doesn't all of a sudden increase parity just by cutting the 2 bottom teams, right? Now the 8th place team is just going to look like garbage instead of the 10th place team. And while, like, yes, the 8th place team is going to be closer to that first place team, right? Like, I don't know. I don't think that less teams inherently means like better quality games all the time.
Well,
it kind of does.
In theory, it means that you
Yes.
have the top 8 players from each role instead of the top 10, which
Right.
mean that like
But like,
things
I
kinda
guess
help
my
out
point
with
is,
that.
I personally, and I think this is just a personal opinion, I don't put much stake in that. Look, in
That's
the
fair.
NFL, right? We all have had to watch the Bears play in prime time like 3 times this year. Okay, it happens.
No, that's
The
true.
Bears still exist.
The thing is,
Um,
people would like kind of like, there are people that like watching the Bears, and there's
Right.
there's fan base, there's
And
fan base
I
things
guess
in place
people
that
don't
need
like
to
watching
be changed.
people don't like watching Evil Geniuses, which is true. However, like just because the Bears are bad or the Patriots are bad, does that mean Mac Jones doesn't deserve to play in the NFL? Or, well, rather, maybe Mac Jones doesn't deserve.
Well, yes,
that's probably not the
but-
best comparison. Yeah, but like, does that mean that his position in the league shouldn't exist? Right? Like Josh Dobbs, Mac Jones, all these guys, they might not deserve to play in the NFL, but they're still 32 quarterbacks, right? Like, that's, I guess, my argument. And
That's
obviously, the NFL has 70 years of history built upon it. The LCS does not. But those are, I guess, the kind of things that come to my mind of like, I don't know. I feel like people overblow like, oh, 8 teams means like it's gonna be so competitive, but it's just a soapbox.
Yeah, and
That's
the
a very small, I think, part of this discussion for me.
and I think part of that goes into if you have like a good, livable tier 2 system below it. That way, the people that don't
Yeah.
make it into that 8-team LCS still have the opportunity to play and get opportunities. We'll see if that ends up being the case. We haven't seen any official announcements for plans for challengers or the qualifiers for 2024 or beyond, and so we can only hope that things start to get better. The biggest thing, I think, getting those spots available for people. 40 players had opportunities to play in Tier 1 or Tier 2 last year that no longer do at the start of the 2024 season. So that's a
Holy
lot of people.
shit.
Like, that's a
That
lot
is
of
a lot.
opportunities that are given to players to really try to devote themselves and be
Yeah.
a professional League of Legends player that just aren't available anymore due to the state of the economy. So that
Yeah, that's bad.
is not that's a bad thing from all of this. Let's talk about some of the good things though, Hawk, as we go on to topic number 3. The
This
8
is gonna be a
teams
long
that
episode,
do
guys.
exist here in the roster. The 8 teams that do exist in the LCS do have some interesting rosters that we can talk about. Hawk, from our perspective, as people who enjoy watching NA Developmental, we have this entire show. What's your favorite LCS roster, the one that you're looking out for this year?
Okay. In my opinion, there's only 2 correct answers to this question. And correct me if I'm wrong, Grapes, but I think the only acceptable answers are 100 Thieves and Cloud9. Reason being, Cloud9 might be a hot take. 100 Thieves is the really obvious one. They've promoted Sniper. They've promoted Meech. Ayla is staying in the LCS, playing alongside River and Quid, which I think the Quid pickup can be debated. I think River's still really good. 100 Thieves, I mean, the big thing is that they're putting in Sniper and Meech. I think that's so exciting. The other one that's maybe debatable, I guess, is FlyQuest. They've got Masu. That's cool. I want to talk about Cloud9 and Busio. That's true. Yeah. They got Masu and Busio. Cloud9, the reason I say them, none of them are rookies, but Cloud9 has just put together probably Blabber, JoJo, and Vulcan are the 3 best native players in their respective roles, at least in the last 5 years. So the fact that they've all been put together now, like, this is exciting as an NA dev fan. Like, if you were watching Academy back in, like, 2018, or, well, even before then, like, 2017, you know what I mean? Like, I think it's cool that this is bona fide homegrown talent that is now, like, oftentimes we talk about super teams having, like, imports, right? I mean, sure, Berserker's an import, but seeing Blabber, JoJo, and Vulcan be talked about in this way, and even Fudge, who's a Nose player, is, like, very exciting to me. So those are my 2 answers, is 100 Thieves and Cloud9.
It's interesting. I have 2 completely different teams that I
really
I
okay. Well, I would love to hear them.
FlyQuest was definitely one of them. They just
Okay.
dropped their roster today officially, as it was announced on their socials at the time that we're recording. It's Whippo, Inspired, Jensen, Masu, and Busio.
Yep.
First of all,
Which
I'm
is
very excited that
huge.
Inspired and Whippo, who are 2 players that were out of jobs in the summer split, like get to play again, and I think both of them were great parts of the LCS when they did play, and having them
big fan
together
of
is going
both
to be
of
very
them.
exciting. And then you have the last 2 summer split most valuable prospects in Masu from this past year and Busio from 2022. I don't think really Busio got a fair shot at like being a full rookie, as that 100 Thieves roster was full of turmoil the entire year, whether it was Tenacity leaving, Bjergsen leaving, or and then just like everything kind of just like scrambled around him for that entire season. I honestly kind of thought of 100 Thieves as like an afterthought as we were getting towards the end of summer split, because things were just just not making sense with them. But now with Busio kind of coming back into this team with Masu, like if that bot lane can really grow and be one of the best bot lanes in the league, which I think definitely has potential to happen if we get towards the end of the season, that's a great sign for NA talent. It's a great sign for the NACL system, which both of these players went through. And man, it's very exciting for just FlyQuest as a whole. And you have Whippo, Inspired, and Jensen, who all technically are from Europe, but I feel like have built at least some level of credibility here in North America over the last couple of years.
Jensen more so. Like, Jensen's the only one that could really, I think, be talked about in like NA talent conversations, just because he is at this point a native player, and his entire career has basically been in North America professionally. Whippo and Inspired, I would agree, are some of the high value imports. So
Yes. I'm mostly looking at this from a Masu Busio perspective, and I'm very down for
that's
that.
exciting. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong.
And the last roster that I want to shout out in terms of NA Dev perspective is Shopify. It could have been more NA Dev, but you do think about it, and 3 of the top players from the Academy scene 1 year ago today, that's Fake God in the top lane, Insanity in the mid lane, Zeyzal in the support role, all 3 of which you probably could argue were best in their respective roles in at least the spring split before Insanity got called up, are now all starting together on an LCS team. And, you do have Boogie and B-Boy, who are players that I probably would not have, thought about keeping around. Hawking, maybe you could talk about your Brazilian import player down there for a second. But I think overall with them, also Tomio kind of jumping in as a sub, which is a leak that I don't think a lot of people have necessarily caught, showing that being part of Disguise, being a part of the winning NACL team will get you opportunities no matter how many years you did play in years past.
Yeah, Shopify is pretty cool. I feel like they do lose points. I'm so conflicted. From an NA dev perspective, Shopify loses so many points for keeping Boogie, who I think was just kind of good. And he was good in summer. And then B-Boy, from an NA dev perspective, makes no fucking sense. From a CBLOL fan perspective, this is really cool, and I'm really excited about this pickup. This is a wild pickup, by the way. Like, I won't talk about it too much to keep time moving, but ADC is by far the most stacked role in CBLOL. Like we have some world-class ADCs. Bvoy, very, very solidly top 3, depending on who you talk to. He's either top 1, 2, or 3. RMC, somewhere out there, is screaming that he's the best AD carry in the league. I'm actually lower on Bvoy than a lot of my fellow compatriots. However, he is fantastic. I did not have this one on my 2024 bingo card, so I'm really interested to see what happens, to be honest. I don't know what to expect. But Bvoy is a great player. Very much the kind of player that he would carry any game when it was on the line. You know what I mean? You could always rely on Bvoy to show up when it mattered most, and his statistics were very high. Statistically, he was the best ADC in the league, which is probably why RMC likes him. Eye test, he wasn't as flashy as some of the other guys, but I think he'll be very good.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it comes down to budget at that point. Like, you could have had Spica and Zen just, like, hop in there and, like, make it a very, like,
I find it hard to
good
believe
team.
that importing somebody is cheaper, but yeah.
I mean,
maybe.
they'll take a minimum salary for sure, right? I'm
Yeah,
sure Bvoy
that's
is not
true.
getting paid as much as someone like Zen would be asking for.
Bvoy, I actually need to, like, look at this. I'm pretty sure his split with Pain was... Yeah, he's coming off of... Wait, he played on Misfits? When did he play on Misfits? What the fuck? I don't
And
remember
all over
that.
the place, it seems.
2020 spring, he played on Misfits. Well, anyway, Bvoy has not played on tier 1 teams too much, so he might be able to do something. But yeah,
It's exciting. And
I'm
the last
excited.
thing,
It's
Yeah, I'm sure
completely
you're probably more excited.
understandably random for North American
Yeah.
fans, though.
the last thing, shout out to Team Liquid and C9 who are keeping some of their native players. I think there was some drama about, like, oh, were they going to switch things up? Was TL going to drop APA and Yon? It seems like they're sticking around. And speaking of Team Liquid, that can take us into topic number 4, because both them and FlyQuest have announced that they will be keeping their NACL rosters for 2024. I think both of them... at the time of the change where you didn't have to have a challengers team, went on the record to say, we're going to keep it for this split and then we're going to reevaluate. And it seems, Hawk, they reevaluated and they decided that it is a good fit for their organizations to keep things around. What does this mean from an NACL perspective to see these two teams back at the top of challengers?
So I'm going to keep it short and sweet. This is huge. This is amazing. Because this basically proves the theorem that we were crying from the rooftops during all the changes, is that there is value in having a tier 2 team. Some teams believe the financial value is not there and they can scout elsewhere, whatever. But especially Team Liquid is a team that has directly benefited from the system. And now FlyQuest, assuming Masu plays well, which I'm sure he will, reigning MVP, they've benefited now too, and it proves that the system works, and there is value in doing this, and there's value in developing homegrown talent. And I mean, especially for Team Liquid, they got to Worlds based on that, and so that is no small feat. And the fact that they're staying, I think, especially Grapes. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. We both thought they were fucking done. Like, we had no expectations. Of
I
them
was
staying.
not necessarily expecting any LCS teams to be back in. I'm happy to have been proven wrong, though.
Yeah. So, the fact that they're staying is amazing, and yeah, I don't have much else to say, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm happy that it's funny how I think at least part of the decision for at least Team Liquid to stay in is realizing that having a sub having somebody to, like, kind of bring it up and down, like, is definitely nice.
Yeah.
I wonder what the decision would have been like if things ended up differently with
And
Harry
especially
APA.
when some teams are paying subs anyway, right? Like, it's not that having the whole roster and allowing those subs to actually play.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And I think on Hotline League, Steve did say how at least part of the decision making was, of course, both their success and also watching NRG kind of just win with people that they pulled from academy and things like that, and have success in that regard. And hopefully that's a good shift towards the narrative that things could go well for these guys. I will say really quickly, maybe on a slightly negative note before we go into topic number 5, there's that contract database account that tracks where people leave and get added or removed from the GCD.
Mm-hmm.
Mir, Harry, and Kimdown were all removed from Team Liquid's contract database as of a couple days ago. It could just mean they're renegotiating and will be back at some point. It could also mean that they're both done. Bradley is the only person in Challengers that's still left with them at this point. It's interesting to speculate about. I don't really know what's going on, and
I will
obviously
say,
nobody else
like,
does. So I thought that was interesting.
that is interesting. Really quick, like, takes on that, I guess, is like, it wouldn't surprise me to see if Mir had other opportunities. Harry wanted to move on from Team Liquid after playing on the organization for, I think, 3 years now. And Kim Down just parting ways, or Team Liquid parting ways with him. I mean, there's other supports out there. Like, I could see Kim Down landing on his feet on any other NACL team. Harry, same thing. And then Mir going to a different region or being on a different NACL team. So
Different
that's not like
region.
immediately alarming to me, but yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and I think FlyQuest also like parted ways with a lot of their players. I think Faisal's the only one that's still left with them right now.
Parted ways with UG and Spyrax Grapes.
Yeah,
who,
speaking of, let's get into that. Yeah, let's talk about our last topic, which we'll do a little bit of dabbling in collegiate, which also has its connections back to NACL, of course, because one of those teams, Maryville University, is in the NACL, and they announced today at the recording of this video that Yuji will be joining his former FlyQuest teammate in Spyrax in joining the university for 2024. I want to say it again. I love how Maryville being in NACL gives these players an opportunity to both pursue an education while also still, guaranteeing themselves almost a spot or an opportunity to at least like either sit in or participate in a tier 2 environment. I think that is very, very cool for the space, and I'm happy that Maryville has that opportunity. Another team that made some moves, Hawk, was the University of St. Thomas, our reigning university champions, who brought in some other hefty names. They have Kenby in the jungle, and Array and Trevor are going to be rounding out their bot lane alongside Porsche and Robbie Bob. Hawk, these rosters look very different from what we saw in the CLO finals just about 6 months ago. But if you did have to pick a winner in a rematch, who would it be right now?
UST. Not even a
Yeah.
contest, man. They brought in some heavy hitters for this change. Look, I'm going to be honest. I think a lot of us forgot about Kemvy after 2023. Like, he was terrible in LCS, and it happens. However, he
Not his
was...
fault. It's on Immortals.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's exactly my point. It was a really rough season, but that's not to say that the player doesn't have a hell of a lot of talent, and especially now going back to collegiate. I mean, we saw what Dardoch did down there. I have no reason to believe that Kemvy could not do similar things. Array, I think, is one of the best AD carries in Tier 2. I was super high on him in spring. It's a shame we didn't get to see him play in summer, and Trevor is a good support. So, yeah, I really don't have much else to say other than that this roster looks so fucking stacked. UST went from being not in the conversation in fall CLO whatsoever. I mean, Grapes, we had a bona fide top 4, and now they are right back in the mix with the top 5.
Yeah, now we got a top 5, and
yeah.
that gets interesting
Yeah,
because
it does.
only 4 teams
I'm
made
sure,
it to land
I'm
last
sure we'll
year,
have
so.
plenty of conversations about those teams later on in the season. But yeah, this roster is crazy. Alongside Robert Bobbert and Porsche, like, this is a good team. The UG move to me is really interesting, Grapes, because Maryville is kind of doing their own little like Fisher with a lot of different players now.
Yeah.
But
I'm gonna check
UG
real
is a
quick.
very good jungler and reunited with Spyrax.
I think they have like 11 different people assigned to their team at this
my
point
God, they
now.
are
Because they have technically Niles, but I think he's coaching now with them. So you have PCL at Spyrax in the top lane. You have Iconic, Odd Orange, and Yuji. You have Getback and Kachi. You have Azog and Scary Jerry, and you have Shady and Zyko. So it's a lot. It's a lot of people that you're
God.
working with now. I don't know how exactly the programs are going to end up shaping out. Maybe people, end up in different spots. But yeah, Yuji is going to be very good. I don't think that jungle was the problem for Maryville in the tournaments that they ended up playing. I think it was
Yeah.
just adjusting to the fact that you do have a role swap Spyrax trying to learn how to play top lane kind of on the fly. And I think once they have their full 5-man roster kind of settled down, kind of wonder if Spyrax would swap back to mid. I don't know if that necessarily is in the cards because you do
See-
have Getback and Kachu there.
Yeah.
But
It's an interesting question about Spyrax swapping back to mid because he does have that synergy with UG, and we know how good Spyrax is. But dude, like, I'm gonna be so real with you. I don't think you can take that away from Getback after the season he just had. Like, he was so fucking good in CLOL and in NACL once they got in. Like, I don't know. I don't really think you can take that away from Getback, but we'll see. I mean, like, they've got 3 very good mid laners because that's not even that's discounting Kachu, who is an extremely exciting young player. So, like, if it's me, I say I don't know if you can take that away from Getback and you try to make Spyrax top work, especially considering that I don't think PCL's been super impressive either. But yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
it's very interesting to see what MU's team will look like for NACL.
And we're gonna see more
because
CLOL moves too.
yeah, and
like,
it's
from
in
other
such
teams.
it's in such a different state than like the other teams. Like we don't know what Fear's doing, we don't know what like Supernova's doing at this point. But like you kind of know what Maryville's doing, but then you also don't because like
Yeah.
there's just a lot of pieces moving around, and so we'll keep
We-
that in mind. I will also say UST though for that matchup. I think it's they're very very stacked.
Especially at least like immediately. Like maybe if Maryville gets their top lane shit figured out, but we'll find out.
Yeah, definitely so. I'm excited for Collegiate. Also very excited though for the NACL as we still have like 9 rosters to figure out. You might know a little bit more about Maryville, so we're gonna have a very exciting part 2, going through some potential rosters that we put together. We'll see you there. As the stove begins to heat up here in this NACL offseason, we're going to try our hand at putting together some rosters that we think could maybe exist. There's a lot of different players and a lot of different people to try and consider for just the 10 spots that are available in the NACL Hawk. But we're going to put some together based off of some specific criteria. How about you explain what we're doing here today?
All right. Well, Grapes, we are going to be the armchair general managers of the NACL. We're each going to build NACL rosters based off of different criteria. 6 different rosters to be exact. We have 6 different categories. We can only use any player once across all of our rosters. So they once they're on a team, they are on that team. No player can be used on 2 rosters. Now, to be clear, that is for each of us. So some of us, like between us, we used a player twice, but each of us would have only used that player once, if that makes sense. We all built separate rosters. We kind of like divvied it up so that way we covered a lot of our bases. We try not to overlap too much, but by and large, that's the rule, is that we can each only use a player once. Rookies are defined as players that have never started a full split in NACL or Academy. So as we'll talk about in just a second, like players like Mobility or Rox 908 actually didn't qualify because of some weird substitute fuckery that happened in spring. Finally, we have to follow NACL import rules, and we can only import players that were played in semi-pro or collegiate in 2023, or LCS, I suppose. But I don't think we used any LCS players that were imports. So, for example, if you want a free Shogo, he takes up an import slot. You can't have any other imports on that team.
Excited. I think that this is going to be a very interesting way to do this because every NACL roster comes in with a different mindset. Whoever is GMing that team, they'll be thinking about different things. They'll be thinking about ways to win, or also maybe other strategies. I do think though, before we get into this, I wonder what your thoughts are on this topic specifically. But I feel like if I had to kind of predict what the offseason is going to look like here in the NACL, I feel like we're going to see a lot more highly experienced players over, taking chances on rookies, just because of the fact that like there's going to be a lot of opportunity for relegation. I think we maybe saw it a little bit more, but especially with the LCS downsizing and every team being eligible for relegation, I feel like we might not see as many rookies as maybe we'd like to see, especially because there's still a lot of talent here in the Challengers area.
Yeah, I would agree. I think both you and I took some flyers on some players that we really like from qualifiers and CLOL. But yeah, there's a lot of homeless players. Grapes talked about it. 40 homeless Team McDonald's players. Like, that's crazy, man.
Yeah.
So we're probably going to see a higher veterancy and probably higher talent level NACL for this year with the 8 LCS teams. But I think it'll be exciting nonetheless. And that's not to say, like, we're not trying to predict things. You'll see very quickly. Our criteria is pretty specific. And we wanted to talk about as many different players as we could heading into the season. But all names that you should know as NACL fans. And, Grapes, as we discovered in our very first podcast episode last January, we've talked a lot about the different criteria and the different sort of lenses to build NACL teams through, and so we're gonna get to put that on display right here.
And we've been very wrong at times. I think
we have been very wrong.
Fear in we put Fear in C9 in like D tier. I think for that, how well the roster is built.
Wrong.
So let's get into it, Hawk. Our first category is a team full of rookies. We just talked about a lot of experience, but if you did have to put together a team of only players who have never played a full split or so in the NACL/Academy space, let's take a look at what we're dealing with here.
Oh, Grapes, we are dealing with a lot. Again, no full splits. So I went ahead and picked Denethor, Limo, Messages, Rockboom, and Daption. This is basically like the promotion tournament standouts, really. But I mean, like, come on, there's such good names on this team. We got a little bit of collegiate. I think these are all players, by the way, that if you're looking to take a flyer, if you're a NACL GM and you're watching our podcast and you're looking to take a flyer on a rookie, I would pick one of these personally, because they have all proven they've deserved a shot. A lot of these players have promoted themselves. You've got a little bit of synergy as well, like Messages and Rock Boom have played together. Yeah.
Yeah, I love all these players. Daption, of course, showed up during CELO, has been in Tier 3 for a while on a lot of different top teams.
Dude,
so,
Daption has been on some crazy teams. He was a wild card red,
Yeah.
like that wild card red. So
Exactly. I think he's definitely a very underrated option, I think, coming in. And an interesting thing that we get to talk about as well is that a lot of these rosters aren't going to be probably physically possible because of the fact that since the teams that
Yeah.
promoted in, like Mirage Alliance and Lit, have to keep 5 out of 7 of their roster plus subs, Message and Rock Boom probably aren't going anywhere. I would imagine both them and somebody on my list, Dragoon, will be playing with Lit next season unless some of the rules
Yeah.
change. But
this
I do appreciate the shout-outs for sure.
all these rosters, I feel like, kind of assume that like none of the teams that played in NACL last year exist. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
we kind of just jumbled everything up. So
Yeah, I mean, for a team of 5 rookies, that's definitely a good one. I feel like I went a little bit more
some
experimental,
spicy ones here.
specifically
You
in
got
my
some spicy
mid jungle,
ones.
but we'll go over the basic ones first. Dragoon, I think a very solid Tier 3 top laner for years, has waited so long for this opportunity in Tier 2. I swear if something happens and he's not playing in the NACL this split, I am going to be so
Dude,
freaking pissed.
it's
Um,
really fucked up. Like he better be playing an NACL, man. Like
Promoted
it's crazy.
twice, finally gets this opportunity. I think Lit is an organization that I think cares a lot about their players, and I'm excited to see him alongside Messages and Rock Boom, I should say, on their team. And shout out to Kizno as well, who we did not get space to include on here. I think he also grew a lot and will
Yeah.
play really well in Tier 2 if he does get that opportunity. And Levitate and Snow too in the bot lane, whether it was Tony Top or Team Ambition, both had very impressive years in the developmental scene, and as a duo, I think worked really well together. Levitate specifically, I think stood out really well in team fights, and somebody who I think had a lot of growth from somebody we didn't know a lot about at all in 2022 to somebody that we definitely know a lot about now. And I think that is going to be the case for the jungle and mid laners that I picked up here for Kryra and Samakin. Now, if you have been keeping up with some of the off-season tournament or off-season combine shenanigans, I should say, these are two names that you probably are a little bit more familiar with, because Kryra was a part of the EG combine that made it all the way to LA to fly out and practice with them, I guess, until the organization kind of blew up. And also was on Cheese Chasers back in the summer split, and he really impressed me in Tier 3, and from what I've heard is really smashing these tryouts right now. So I have a feeling a lot of people will be taking a look at Kryra in the jungle for 2024. And Samakin in the mid lane is an interesting one to me. He's like rank 3 or 4 on the solo queue ladder. He might have even hit rank 1 at a certain point. Plays for Boston University CLO team. Has been on a bunch of these like 2 and 3 OQ rosters throughout 2023. But I think really has impressed in some of these combines. I got to watch him in person over at BU for a tournament a couple of weeks ago. And I mean, he wasn't playing against the highest level of competition, but definitely looked very impressive there. And I think this guy is going to have a trajectory in his career very similar to somebody like Levitate, who is on one of those lower level CLO teams and was good doing well in solo queue. Samakin doing much better than Levitate in solo queue going up to this year. I think this guy's going to be pretty good.
Yeah, I've definitely heard the rumblings of Kryra and Samakin both in combines. Great. I think the crazy thing about both of our teams right here is like 7 of the 10 players on this list are players we had like no expectations for heading into 2023. With the exceptions being like Daption, Dragoon, and then like I'll include Messages because I was kind of hyped about him, but like now we're basically saying like these are all players that could be playing at NACL, which is super fucking hype. Yeah, I mean we've got a lot of talent here. I probably should keep us moving for time.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else to add for this one?
No, I don't think so. I hope that we get some rookies. I think we have a couple more that we're going to talk about in just a couple of minutes.
Dragoon, Messages, and Rock Boom really should be playing at NACL.
No, they will.
And then
unless some really crazy rule changes happen, they'll be playing.
Yeah, I would say Grapes that Denethor feels like a pretty likely pickup. I mean, everyone's been talking about this guy since CLOL season. Levitate and Snow 2 likewise. So we'll see what happens. But
Thing is, he's
some
still
of these
with
feel likely.
He's still with Winthrop, and they
Yes.
did very well
so
in the
maybe,
qualifiers.
maybe
I
he'll
wouldn't be
play
surprised
in
if they played the
qualifiers,
qualifiers
and
again.
try to promote.
But yeah, these are definitely players that I have my eyes on. Speaking of, we can move on to our next topic, our next criteria here, where instead of picking rookies, we can still have some rookies here, but this is the team that, if you're GM, you're not necessarily caring too much about how they look at the beginning. They might go 0-6 in week 1, or however the structure actually might end up being, and then towards the end of the year, they're going to look really good after getting a lot of time together. Hawk, what are we looking at here?
Yeah, so and also the one other I guess criteria that we pick these teams off of is theoretically each subsequent team should be able to beat our team before it. It's going to be a little subjective, and obviously there's randomness involved. But so theoretically, we're increasing in prestige as we go. So all rookies, and now it's like a lot of players that, for me, the way I looked at this, I think this was one of our more open-ended categories, was players that either were very good pieces on teams that weren't as good, or I guess more rookies. You know what I mean? That was the way I looked at this.
People that
so
have
nobody here is a world beater, but everybody here, I think, could be really strong if they played together. Faisal, Music, and Lens being those three, all had fantastic splits. Faisal was a player, Grapes, that I know we were concerned about heading into 2023, and blew our expectations out of the water. Ended up being one of the best top laners and challengers. Music has absolutely stormed onto the scene since coming over from Greece, and Lens, we've talked about him a lot as being one of the quietly best performing AD carries in the challenger scene. And a very, very hype young talent. And then I've got Toasty Alex and Rox.
Ooh, Rox
has
coming in.
been here. Solo Q Warrior, really hardcore grinder. From what I've seen or heard, been playing pretty well in combines yet again. And I think he's been a player that's always been knocking around. Has not really played on any high profile teams.
Played for TSM for a little bit.
That's the one exception was his.
And Converts with Scary Jerry. Those are the two things that he's been known for. That and then of course Rock Bottom.
But that's what I mean is those feel like exceptions, right? So anytime Rox has been in the conversation, it's been like, oh, there's Rox, and then he goes away. I would like to see him stay for a bit. And then Toasty Alex Grapes, a very, very exciting young player that has been crushing it.
Yeah, I think he's been doing well in a lot of the combines. He finished second with Coachify, and was a very important piece of that team. So I'm very excited about this guy.
Correct me if I'm wrong. We didn't really see Toasty too much in 2023, but we did it in 2022 with Team Fish Taco for a bit, which was a team that I guess was ultimately kind of disappointing. But Toasty was 15 when they played. So, a very exciting young player, Toasty is. So
Toasty was a sub.
He's gotten a lot better.
Toasty was a sub on AoE in the spring split, which is why he didn't play in summer. And so
there we go.
He was sitting in there behind, I think it was Darkwings at that point.
Yeah.
And you remember him from Wildcard, the Wildcard dev teams, and then of course TFT in 2022. And now, I think very much ready to go. He's 17 years old. Was just on a top NACL Q team that honestly, the rest of the roster.
Toasty's also killing it in ACL right now too, right?
He's playing top lane for Fear. So
okay, never mind. He's playing top lane. Okay.
A little bit different.
Wait,
we'll get
I
into
thought
some lane
Philip
swaps
was
a little
on their
bit later.
ACL team. Am I cooked?
No, it's Toasty, and then I think ZZ Legendary is their support because they were just looking for people to play with that core. So it's a little different from the NACL team. My little group that I came up with are all people that I think are very, very promising and all looked very good in times, and also had other moments where they maybe weren't as good. Zamudo in the top lane, definitely very polarizing player in terms of having very high highs and low lows throughout his time on Wildcard. Definitely inted away a couple of games in the season, but also looked like one of the best top laners at times when he was playing things like the Rumble. And we know how skilled this guy is. We remember watching him back in Tier 3. He is somebody I'm very excited about moving forward. He better be on an ACL team. Don't care which one it is. He better be on one. Should Will, who came in the summer split after taking a couple of splits off, actually. And, joining an AoE team that I thought didn't need too many changes, but they ended up making a decent amount of changes, and they all ended up being pretty good. Will definitely being one of them. Will's early games were always very, very solid, always on those playmakers like the Vi, and really taking over early games. And I think if he can work on the team fighting later on, he'll be a very, very well-rounded player that has been kind of hyped up for a couple of years now, and I want to see take that next step. As with Kachu as well in the mid lane. Team Ambition. Also played on some of these other orgs. I think subbed a little bit on TL. So definitely a player who's been around, is currently also on Maryville. So there's a lot of different places where this guy could potentially end up. But we definitely saw some really impressive things from him, especially towards the end of 2023 when he was with Team Ambition. And then the bot lane of Lynx and Dawnbray, maybe a little bit more experience. But I was very high on what Dawnbray was doing towards the start of the summer split when he joined Wildcard, as well as Lynx, kind of throughout the year. I think Lynx was a very underrated ADC. Definitely struggled in lane a little bit, but he could team fight like it was nobody's business. I think all these players have areas that they need to improve in, which means that if they do have a full year extra of experience, it could really this could be a very scary team in the 2025 NACL, for instance.
Yeah, I would agree. This is already, for anyone watching, there are players that we just had to leave off and that we both wanted to include on our teams. Some of us some of the players, one of us included and not the other, again, because we were trying to there's so many players to talk about and that we really want to showcase. So if you're not on any of our lists, first of all, doesn't mean we think you're bad. And second of all, if you're not on one of our lists, rest assured, we probably wanted to pick you at some point, but we're trying to fit the criteria. We're trying to do different stuff. So because Grapes, Lynx and Zamudo were, for me personally, two players that I was really impressed with in NACL 2023, especially given their team, what teams they were on and where they were in the standings. And I didn't include them in any of my teams. So I like these picks. I like all your picks. And I definitely think these are all players that have at one point or another, maybe say for Kachu, been hyped up and have yet to fully realize that potential on a top tier team.
Yeah, I think in the right situation, all these guys can really shine and can really make some big strides. And that's I guess the point of this roster. Who can have the biggest start of the season to top of the season jump. And that was my process to go with here. Let's switch it up a little bit though. Go with a bit of a wild card. This is, sometimes you're playing with the same teammates for a little bit too long. You need some change. So Hawk, our decision here was to try to make a very, very solid NACL team with players who have never played with each other on a competitive team before. They might have played some solo queue together, but in terms of comp, zero, shared teams with them. This is the most random one that we had.
This was by far the hardest team to put together, by the way. I got so mad. So for the record, I was going to put Zyko in Array, but apparently they played together on a team, an amateur team. It was Array's first ever competitive tournament in 2019. So go fuck yourself, Leaguepedia, for that. And really made my life difficult.
The tournament would have still existed even if Leaguepedia didn't put it in, Just saying.
Right, well, yeah, you're right. but I wouldn't have known. So because I wasn't watching NA Dev in 2019, unfortunately. However, I do feel like I get extra credit for somehow including Dardoch on this.
Talking about brand new look coming in support,
with the longest Leaguepedia page. I also want to say, Grapes, I really respect you for putting top lane Spyrax on your NACL.
Another brand new look. Another brand new look.
Yeah, it's true. It is a brand new look. It does fit brand new look. Would not really say his top lane is NACL ready yet. It could be. But it's not yet from what I've seen. But yeah, Grapes, I basically took the best players that I hadn't already put on one of my later teams and put them here and then hoped it worked. For Quacker, Perry, and Harry, it did. It was great. Bot lane was a little bit more of a challenge. I forgot that Array even existed because he didn't play in summer. I remembered that Array existed and got excited and put him on here. It didn't work with Zyko, so I put in Dardoch. That's basically my logic. I I'm not gonna lie. I think this team like super clears the other two as far as ability. These are some of the best players in their respective roles in the NACL already. I mean, Grapes, we're already talking like top 5 minimum in their roles for everyone except for maybe Dardoch. But his level of leadership that he brings to a team is hard to overstate. So I think that gives him a lot of value in the support position on a team like this as well.
Yeah, I'll give you Spyrax. Maybe doesn't have the most top lane experience, but it was a brand new look.
Yeah.
Like, we're never going to see him before. Fit with the theme. Same with you and Dardoch, I will say. So
yeah,
I'm happy.
The astute CLOL watchers amongst you might realize that I cheated a little bit. Dardoch is technically a race coach right now, but this new look US team
hasn't happened yet though.
They've not played in any tournaments yet, and Dardoch's the coach, so like I don't think it really matters. Okay, continue.
I kind of went with a similar strategy, just picking people that I thought were good, and I'm excited to watch in some capacity. Might not be able to watch a ton of Tomio because, as we mentioned earlier on the show, we'll be playing as a sub for Shopify. But yeah, I thought he deserves a bit of a shout out as another player from
Tomio on a later roster. So yeah.
Otherwise, I have Spyrax, I have Shochi, Neo, who is Dardoch's bot lane partner, and Breezy, who I think is also very good, formerly of AoE, alongside Lynx. I don't know if there's much to talk about here. I feel like the people that we want to talk about, we're going to talk about a little bit later. So
yeah, I mean, really, Grapes, we just picked very, very good players that we did. This was like our extras bin, at least for me. Like, and this was like the best of the rest, and that's not to say that these guys are bad. It's just like we couldn't fit them on like one of the other ones.
I would be excited if a team like announced like I don't know, like this is our roster for 2024.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I'd be very excited.
If Hawk's brand new look team or Grapes' brand new look team was a 2024 NACL team, that is like super pog. So yeah.
I think honestly, if any of these teams got announced, I'd be excited about seeing them in NACL. So
I would just be impressed that we predicted it. Honestly.
Let's get into some more of the heavy hitters here as we get into the second half of this. Let's talk about what we would kind of associate as being a traditional Tier 2 setup. Back in the day when there was a ton of Academy/Challenger teams, I think the formula that I think worked for a lot of people is having some new kids with some more experienced players. So Hawk, we tried to pick like 2 veterans and 2 or 3 rookies on each of these teams. What are you rocking with in this idealistic affiliate organization?
Yeah, well, when I think of the affiliate formula teams that had some hype young guns with some returning players, I think of DSG, I think of Team Liquid Challengers. So I thought, well, Bradley's a good player. He played on TLC. Tomio's a good player. He was the veteran on one of the veterans on DSG. Let's get them. Okay, Chime is a good support. Let's get him. And then I actually built this team around Akashi. I wanted to include him on one of these rosters. He's an import.
Wow.
And many of you might not know Akashi super well. He's hardly played on any well-known tournaments. He played.
If you've watched this show, you know who Akashi is at this point.
Yeah, if you watch this show, if you watch the Trick or Treat Invitational, you're based to know who Akashi is. Because first of all, he fucking ran that tournament. He was probably the MVP of the tournament there. But this guy is like a mechanical god. And he's not. He plays on St. Clair. Has not been seen too much, but like Akashi is very, very legit, and I think legitimately, like if he played in NACL tomorrow, would be a top tier mid laner. Definitely a player that I think has been a little bit screwed over by the way import rules interact with CLOL and NACL and all that. However, it's incredibly fortunate that we've been able to have him playing in our collegiate space at all because this guy's amazing. And then I also got Mobility Grapes because we saw flashes of what he could do on Evil Geniuses. Wasn't quite there yet, but I mean, this is a player that is, you talk to Mobility, he is so hungry to win, man, and so hungry to improve. I remember we left him off of our all-pro voting in summer, and like the man took it personally, and I literally joked with you, Grapes. I was like, yeah, watch this guy after we do this go and win promotion. And he did not.
Close.
However, Mobility was insane in promotion. And this is a player I want to see back at this level.
Oh, yeah. You're talking about like a piece that could really like get to that next level.
Grow into something, yeah. Like
remember, we barely knew anything about Mobility even going into 2023 when he was stepping in for Evil Geniuses.
We were like, hey, he played for Tempest and was pretty good. Like that was
literally.
It. That was our...
Yeah. He was high solo queue. He played for Tempest, and the amount of growth that he made from the start of that year, where he really looked not good at all, to the end of this season, where he was one of the best players in that promotion tournament, is somebody that I would want if I was an LCS organization on my team to maybe make that next jump, be that next like Masu-ish figure who goes from somebody who's a little bit less known to being on an LCS team in a year's time. So yeah, building around those two players, Akashi, mobility, Bradley as well, honestly, and honestly, like I like what you have here because all these players, like some of them are more experienced, some of them are more veteran, but like players like Bradley, Tomio, and Chime all could 100% be back in the LCS.
And I also,
very
I was trying to think like GM wise too, like stability, right? Like Bradley, Tomio, Chime, especially Bradley and Tomio are very known for their like stable gameplay and like holding things together. But yeah, dude, I want to see them in LCS too. Like it's not just about Akashi and mobility and the young guns, and I think that point that you bring up is valuable.
Yeah, I took this, I guess, a little bit more to the formula, like almost like I picked two players who were like in LCS for a year, and that's Philip and Tomo. I think they're both very solid. Philip played on Fear, and was great in the summer split, as well as having a very solid season start to the spring on Fly. And Tomo was the best ADC in NACL until he got promoted to Dig to replace Spawn, who was struggling a little bit. So I think having these players on your NACL team is going to be very solid. We saw how Philip, working with some of the younger players on Fear, was able to help them out a lot, be that kind of, I guess, a kind of older guy while also still being a very goofy and fun personality. And then the piece I'm going to build around, I'm going to have Toasty, who we talked about a little bit in the mid lane. I really think this guy's good and should be on
I
an
feel like
NACL team.
Toasty's a risky one. Both of our mid laners, kind of like riskier picks, I feel like.
Yeah, might have a slower start to the year. But then with the other pieces, Yukino and Kimdown, who have now had some time in the spotlight in Challengers. Yukino only one split as 100 Thieves Challengers kind of ditched him and wasn't able to play with him. And Kimdown, who, again, was another one of those players like Mobility who took that status of being somebody who was not super well known to being a very solid player in NACL by the end of his season. And I don't know where he's going to go for 2024. I hope he still remains in the NACL, and because I think he's somebody that you can build around as somebody who could be a very solid player and solid piece if given a little bit more time.
Yeah, I agree. I think Yukino in particular is a really interesting piece because Grapes, I don't know if you agree, but he feels to me like a player that has had a lot of hype around him for a few splits now and is like just yet to fully realize that potential, but we're waiting for it. We saw flashes of it on that 100 Thieves Challengers roster.
He has some really good games on 100 Thieves. And
and you can tell that the talent is there.
Yeah, and I don't know if you remember this, but then there was that Cold Hearted team that he was a part of back in summer.
Well,
and
we don't need to talk about that team.
He was there, and when he was playing there, he was very, very good on that team. So he still got it for sure. I think. I would be very, very sad if he was not playing in Challengers this year, because I think he is a prospect definitely worth investing in, alongside somebody like Kimdown. So
agreed.
Yeah, I think if I was an affiliate team, honestly, like if I was FlyQuest or Team Liquid, obviously like you might want to keep some of the players that you have. But in terms of like the potential prospects that you could bring in, like these are definitely people that I'd be considering, especially Hawk, because the import stuff kind of maybe works a little bit differently for somebody like Akashi if they are being picked up by like an LCS org. So that could be like a potential angle in.
That's really true. Yeah, I feel like if you're an import, you would definitely rather be picked up by an LCS affiliated team potentially. Grapes, I also, before we move on to our next rosters, I love how we both also went with one experienced, one like less experienced bottom laner. Tomo Kimdown, really similar to Arrow Kimdown on Team Liquid Challengers last year, and the mobility Chime.
Agree.
Like
I feel like
we
that's
both
the
were
way
cooking
that's
down
the way
there.
to do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
That's the move. All right.
All right. Well, we got a couple more. Speaking of people who could be in the LCS, this next one is maybe like the wild card of old approach, where you got development fees for having players that got picked up by the higher level organization. If you were just trying to farm LCS promotions, this is the teams that we have chosen to potentially build. Hawk, walk us through what we're looking at here.
Yeah, man. This is like basically Grapes. Like this is in a nutshell our like early MVP prospects for this coming split, with like an asterisk next to it because we don't know exactly who's playing and we have our next roster, our last roster coming up. But this like that's in a nutshell what this is. For me, I kind of put Stixay in for the memes. However, I genuinely believe this. The man never goes away and is always
He'll always
good.
be back.
I mean, he had an unbelievable career resurgence this past year on Golden Guardians. He's already done it like twice. He'll be back. He's the Terminator for LCS. And he's probably going to be really fucking good if he plays in NACL. That's if he doesn't retire, which I hope he doesn't. I love Stixay. Poom, sort of similar. A player that I've just always thought when he plays in the LCS looks pretty good. Not great, but like I'm not like, Poom's bad or anything. I've never thought he's the worst support by any means, and I would believe that he could prove once again in Challengers that he's a player deserving of that sort of LCS conversation. Gripes, I'm really excited about the top side though. Surdy, Keel, and Young. Surdy was promoted to LCS before his before Evil Geniuses unfortunately went boom, which my heart really goes out for him. He better be on a team, man.
Yeah.
By summer, because Surdy, I think we saw it in summer, and especially with Evil Geniuses picking him up, and not only that, picking him up over keeping Revenge, by the way, which Revenge is a player that neither of us put on our teams, but yeah.
I just don't know if he'd play NACL at this point.
Right, but like I think that just speaks to Surdy's talent. This player is so good, and I really hope that he gets that shot. Young, I think Grapes is probably the most exciting mid lane prospect that has not played an LCS before that we have in our region.
One game.
Oh.
One game in lock-in.
One weekend, I believe. It was 2 games, if I'm not wrong. But yeah, maybe it was it 1 game?
It was either 1 game or 2 games. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah.
But.
Regardless, you're right. We did see very briefly Young play, but by and large has not played an LCS. And I think most would agree that he's the most exciting mid lane talent that we have. And then Keel, this one, I don't know if this is a hot take, Grapes, but if he plays jungle the way that he did this past split, the man is going to be an MVP. Straight up.
He was third place last split.
Yeah, he was third place last split, and I mean, he was so good. So
yeah, we got the chance to talk to both Keel and Young. So you're just picking
That's true.
the fucking salty runback.
And I talked to
here.
Surdy.
Yeah, you got Surdy, Keel, and Young
I
on
just
here.
farmed the play, but see, Grapes.
Because we talked to the good ones. That's why.
You think yeah, exactly. You think I put them on this roster because we talked to them? No, I talked to them because I knew they'd be an LCS by 20.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. We're just trying to build our cloud up.
Yeah,
obviously.
man. Yeah.
No, I love all these players. I think the goal of this roster, as we said, just picking people who will be in the LCS again at some point. I think I cheated a little bit by picking 4 people who played like a half split or more in the
Literally
LCS
last
already.
year, yeah.
In the last season, but these are all people who I still consider to be developmental pieces, and could grow even more and be like a very solid LCS player in 2024. The one exception to that could be Tenacity. I think he's already kind of a fully built product, and he's a very good top laner. He just kind of got lost in the shuffle as wanting to come back after taking a split off, and then the LCS kind of reducing their teams and people already having verbal agreements. This guy, very, very good. He was the best top laner by far in Academy, I should say, back in 2022 before he got promoted.
Yeah. Grace, we've already talked about this a little bit, but I feel like 2023 100 Thieves was pretty visually a dysfunctional roster in how it played. So I feel like it's not fair to give anyone that played on that team that's not a fair shake as their only
dude, Tenacity was playing like tanks like the entire season. Like that's not what he did. And when he got opportunities on things like Fiora, he would just like 1v9 the game, and it just like was the way the roster was constructed. I'm not a big fan. Speaking of other pieces, another guy that kind of got affected by the teams collapsing within themselves is Shaden, who, I wasn't the highest on how Shaden looked in the LCS. I think he had some really, really bright moments in Academy, in NACL, as we saw specifically towards the spring split. And people like Kelsey and people within Evil Geniuses definitely saw a ton of value in this guy. I think I'm okay with the fact that he's not necessarily going to be in LCS. I think he might need a little bit more time to kind of build up. But with the flashes that we've seen, like this guy could definitely make it back to that stage very sooner rather than later.
For 2024, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, exactly. He was one of the other people alongside Surdy who kind of got messed up a little bit. Harry in the mid lane, I think this guy He smurfed Academy for 3 years. He had a bit of an off split, came back down to Academy, smurfed again. I think he deserves another shot and should. Alongside Winsome, who was the best part of FlyQuest in 2023, which is really sad to say in a lot of ways because of how much promise is around that roster. But I think he grew a lot in terms of his leadership when he came down to the NACL and joined that FlyQuest team. That it did end up performing very well, and so I wouldn't be surprised to see him back on that stage.
Grapes, all I want to say is FlyQuest never looked the same after Winsome went back to NACL.
No, exactly. Yeah. And say what you will about that whole situation, but I don't necessarily think it was Ayla that being the problem. But Winsome did look pretty good.
They never
when he
looked
was
the
up
same.
there.
Yeah, it's just a fact.
My one wild card, pardon the pun, because this guy did play on that team, is Lens, their bottom laner, who you talked about a little bit earlier.
Spicy one.
But I saw stuff from Lens in 2023 when he was on that wild card team that was very reminiscent of like moments that we also saw from Masu. Whether it was like the 1v3 outplays in bottom lane, like surviving a dive, or just like getting pentakill in like a random ass team fight for no reason. Like this guy has such good hands. He can lane really well, and I thought was one of the best ADCs in the entire league throughout both the spring and the summer split last year. Remember, he was on 100 Thieves next for a little bit in that summer split after Array ended up getting promoted. So this is a guy that I am very excited about. He's my, sleeper MVP
that's a spicy pick
for 2024.
I respect it, though.
This guy's good. Very good.
Yeah. I mean, that's so interesting because at least for me personally, like I think Lens is really good. I put him on my improvement team, but LCS by next year, I mean, he would have to have a very good year, but
he would need like a Masu level jump, and I think he looked better this year than Masu did in 2022 when he was on Team Pending, I would say. That's
true.
Being able to have those top performances, and I think this guy is very, very solid. I thought he was comparable to Masu at some points in that split. Obviously not throughout the entire split, but in certain moments.
Masu's growth trajectory is pretty unprecedented, Grapes. I mean, genuinely, when's the last time we saw something like that? Because even someone like Sniper still had to play 2 full years in the system just because of his age. Masu came in like halfway through summer split, played mediocre, won MVP in NACL the following year, refused to elaborate, and got promoted to LCS. Like, that is an insane trajectory for that player. So shout out to Masu. Yeah. Lens could do something similar, and it would be really impressive if he did. So
yeah, let's move on to our last roster here of this episode. We're just trying to pick the best team. Hawk, if we had to our biggest priority was to win the NACL. We had unlimited budget, unlimited aspirations, unlimited to your extent. Definitely went a little bit farther than I did. Look at the people that we have on here. But if you had to win the league, this is who we would pick.
Grapes, my team clears. That's all I'm saying. Okay.
It does because you have Spica and Licorice on your team.
Yeah, I built
Sorry, you have an LCS MVP and somebody who went to Worlds.
This team could lose to BDS at Worlds. Okay, that's all I'm saying. No, I want you to just imagine this team, not just look at the names on this roster, but first, let's think about this. Spica, Winsome have experience playing together from their time on FlyQuest. Just this past year, right? You've got Shogo, a player that has never been given a fair shake in the North American semi-pro scene, ever. After now winning back-to-back CLOL championships, projected to be playing in the qualifiers with Ole Miss this coming year. We'll see if he gets any offers before then. I would kind of hope he does, but maybe he'll promote in. But Shogo, I don't know, Grapes. He takes up an import slot, and some people have said, I've heard the sentiment that he's not worth using a slot on because he might just not be that good. But after what I've now seen in not 1 but 2 consecutive years of championship CLOL teams where it was all about him, by the way, he played at such a higher level than every other AD carry in those tournaments that I refuse to believe that his level of play is not up to par with some of the best in the Challengers League. I just straight up, I think he would be that good. And on a team like this, where every other piece can work towards him, I think he could do it. Because you got Licorice then in the top lane, who is a player that has shown immense depth in what he can do for a team, from leadership capability to Sorry, I muted my mic. Leadership, carries, tanks. He's done it all, and just so much experience. World semifinalist, and Shochi in the mid lane. Probably the second most exciting LCS, or rather, like, mid lane talent that we have. I went back and forth as to whether or not I wanted to put Young or Shochi on this team. I ended up putting Shochi. Reason being, he can play towards these god side lanes, man. He can get Shogo going with his Swiss Army knife picks. You know, he can play all that random shit. He can get Licorice going in a side lane. He can play towards Spica. Like, I feel like Shochi is actually kind of the glue that Licorice, Spica, and Shogo could need to pull them together. And so that's this team. I think this team is just, like, crazy.
You know what I just realized we didn't talk about at all this episode? Is that NACL is moving to Fearless Draft for 2024, and Shochi.
Oh yeah, Shochi's
quote-tweeted
unleashed, bro.
with
Why
having
did we
his
not
massive
put that
champion
in the
pool.
headline?
I kind of forgot about it. I'm not gonna lie.
I forgot about it too.
We could talk about it next week
about
if
it
we want
before
to.
we started doing our headlines.
Yeah, it's okay. There's a lot of topics to discuss. Sometimes you just gotta pick 5 and move on. But
That's
yeah,
for next week.
man, this is just. I mean, okay. If you could have also you could have just gone and picked Zen or who else is homeless at this point?
That's
like
true.
Team McDonald's. Like there's a lot of different options.
But would Sven play in NACL though?
Would Licorice and Spica play in NACL? I mean, maybe I don't think
Genuinely?
Spica's playing in NACL.
Spica maybe not. I could totally see Licorice playing in NACL if I'm being real with you.
That's fair. I could see a world actually. Now that I'm thinking about it a little
Yeah.
bit more. Spica streams. She's just gonna be streaming.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. I mean, yeah, this team is very good. A lot of very top tier people. I've got some other people who I think are pretty good. We've talked about all of them, and so except for Mir actually, who could potentially be going somewhere else, but we don't really know exactly. He's released from Team Liquid as far as we know, but did win the MVP, which meant somebody who could be in the running for being in the LCS or being in a tier 1 region soon. And when he was on that first place TL team, he a lot of the time was a driving factor in how they were finding wins. And if you're trying to win, you grab Mir, you grab Surdy, who again turned that EG team from a walking corpse into a finalist in the NACL, and then you grab some champions for good measure. Young in the mid lane, you have Array, who is a sub on Golden Guardians alongside Licorice, I guess you could say, and Chime, who had a very solid LCS year.
I mean, Grapes, what I just realized about your team, remember back in spring when I was super high on that Golden Guardians team that I was like, oh my god, the carries Young and Array are just so good that they might be able to like win it all. Like, take those two amazing carries, which at one point I said this team had the best carry play in the NACL. It might have changed a little bit by playoffs, but at one point I said those words. And upgrade literally every piece around them. Yeah, you might have a contender on your hands with this one.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to pick a team of players who I could realistically see playing in this space for 2024.
Oh yeah,
I think we have different opinions on like who could potentially be making it. I
my
don't know
team might
100% for
clear,
sure.
but like yours is really fucking good. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I'd be very excited to see this roster get
And
announced.
to
like,
be
on
real
an
for a
ACL
second too. Oh, sorry.
No, I'd be very excited to see this team like getting announced. Like I think they'd be the contenders if it existed. So.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It would be cool. And to be real for a second too, like part of the reason why I wanted to include like Licorice and Spica is I did sort of want to acknowledge like the homeless LCS players, because that is like there's a lot of really talented players that are currently teamless, and maybe they play in NACL, maybe they don't, but they are there. And like, I mean, there's a very real possibility that Licorice is playing in Challengers League next split, and would be a force to be reckoned with. We just like this top lane matchup. Imagine getting to watch that. And yeah, I could have put.
Should have
Sven.
an LCS. These are the two people that got robbed of spots in LCS.
Dude, for real, man. I mean, I feel like they would not be the worst top laners in LCS if they played in it anyway. But
no, not at all.
And yeah, I could have put Sven as my AD carry, but dude, it's time. Free Shogo. He could win it. He's already won CLL twice. He could do it.
Dude, like talking about all these players again is getting me so excited for like
I know,
when these rosters get announced. Like, okay, if one of us gets like a full 5 members, not gonna happen, especially because of the situations of like the Mirage Alliance and Lit probably have to stick together for the most part. I would be surprised to see like an org like Fear kind of keep a lot of their core players, or maybe even someone like like an AoE or something. But like this is exciting. We're getting into it now.
We should make a bet right now. If one of our rosters ends up coming true, what what happens?
Like we'll do something. I don't know.
Yeah,
we'll,
yeah, I don't
we'll
know,
have
like,
we'll have them all on the show or something, something like that.
Yeah, okay. That our first interview for 2024 is going to be the roster that we predicted. Boom. You
I
heard it
love
here
that.
first.
Yeah. Okay. I'm down for that. There's a couple that are like relatively realistic. You know, like a school like, sorry, a team like like Disguised, who has like not unlimited money, but like unlimited influence, especially after like 4 of their players just literally got promoted.
Oh yeah.
Like
They've
a
got
lot of
pull.
people are going to be excited to play for that team. Like you could get a whole list of top contenders that we were listing, like on a single roster, whether it's with them or one of the LCS affiliates like TL or Fly. So it's possible that one of these teams ends up
unironically,
forming.
Grapes, your last team, the Surdy Mir Young Array Chime, I could totally see that happening. Like,
That's just
I think that
Disguised.
is the most likely to like actually happen out of any of the teams that we talked about.
I'm excited. I'm ready. Hopefully, some Pokemon end up leaking some stuff soon because I just
We're
eat that
ready for
shit
the
up,
leaks,
you know?
man. We gotta wait for the combines to finish, and then I'm sure they'll start coming out.
Yeah, I'm ready for all of this here. Ready for the roster meeting to get underway. Hawk, you're doing some of combine stuff this weekend, actually.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, tune in on Friday. Me and Desterux are going to be covering the first day of the AOE Combine. I assume it'll be on the Area of Effect Twitch. I don't actually know exactly where that'll be, but check it out on Friday. It's also going on Saturday and Sunday. We've got some really stacked names. It's a bit of a smaller combine. I think there's only 4 or 5 players in each role. But I mean, some real heavy hitters. Dude, we got Sniper playing. Man is just an LCS top laner now. So
We might have talked about like 90% of the people in that combine like today on this list. Like a lot of them.
yeah,
are on
I think
here.
so. I think the combine has already been announced on AOE's Twitter. I know that broadcast talent has been. I think they've announced the
Yeah,
players
all
as
the
well.
players
So,
are announced as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
so go check it out. I honestly don't remember it off the top of my head, but this is gonna be a really hype one. This is gonna be a high profile combine for sure.
Yeah, and we got some more stuff cooking up over the next couple weeks. So stay tuned to see when that kind of stuff comes out. But I'm excited to get back into this, Hawk. As we said before, we're fully set, locked and loaded for 2024 here on Salty Runback. So make sure you follow us
Yes,
on all of our
sir.
socials here. And I don't know, I guess it's time to just close out the show. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, at Salty Runback Pod on everything, at Hawkcast, at Speedy Grapes. If you don't think that Spica's gonna play in Challengers League and that we're dumb, I don't know. If you don't think Shogo would win NACL, take it with a grain of salt. I've been Hawk. That's been Grapes.